We're glad to still have you back. This is Signature Television, and this is the Signature Morning. We'll be moving ahead to another segment. We'll be discussing Nigeria at 64. Yeah, the human rights violations. But before we talk about the violations, we have a very significant person in our midst who is celebrating his birthday today. We're talking about our guest, Larry Ogwego, human rights advocate. Today is his birthday. Happy birthday, Larry.
Happy birthday to you, sir.
Thank you, Charles.
So I hope you're not going to arrest any human rights violation today.
Today we are not. I have a right to relax too.
Okay.
Yes, I have a right to think about life. I have a right to mingle with friends and generally enjoy life. It's actually a right we have.
Absolutely.
In fact, kids have a right to play. A lot of people don't understand that. It's actually enshrined in the Child Rights Act that they have a right to play.
Oh, really?
So I also want to assume that as my mother's kid, I have a right to play today, to relax.
How do you celebrate your birthday?
First of all, I reflect. I start from the previous day to reflect on life, to ask myself, how well have you done? And then what are you going to do with the rest of the time? And there's something, I got a very interesting insight this morning when I was reflecting and talking about birthday with my friend. And it got both of us a little worried, not just thinking. I told him that we're not very intentional about how we spend our lives. That life is like an exam where you don't know when the examiner will say, time up, bring your script. So I now said, imagine that you're in that all-important exam, your degree exam. And then they announce that you don't know when you stop writing. Imagine how frantically you write. Imagine how you choose the most critical questions and be dealing with them so that anytime they take your paper, you'll pass. And that's actually what we are doing.
Wow.
Because we don't know, no matter how much good food you eat, how careful you are, you still don't know. I mean, some guys were in Lagos and the plane just came from above and killed them. And they never flew in a plane before. So, I mean, that thing got me thinking. So you ask yourself, if you're taking this exam that you don't know when they will take your paper, how intentional will you be? And that's actually what we're doing in the exam of life. We're on a stage and we don't know when they will draw the curtain and say, it's over for you. And that actually got me thinking today that I should have more sense of urgency. I should be writing as if they may take my script the next minute.
Wow.
And these are the kind of things that actually help me to be more intentional, more focused about the things I want to do. Basically, what I want to do at the end of the day is to leave a legacy, not what Nigerians call legacy. If you ask a typical governor, say, oh, my legacy is that I built a house somewhere. No. For me, the greatest legacy you can leave is to affect people, affect the environment through people in such a way that your life will be a lesson to people who come after you. And then a lot of people want to live the life you lived. And for me, that's really the assignment, as it were. So how do I celebrate my birthday? I reflect. I get feedback. I ask some of my close friends who can tell truth to power to actually tell me how well I've done. And that's pretty worrisome because I'm getting the feedback.
There isn't any going to be parties or maybe some sort of gathering of friends to eat suya.
And cakes.
So I was going to maybe ask that in a specific way, but you are talking about reflection. I mean, I hope the reflection would also be...
We reflect on
his reads.
Yes, but that's part of the relaxation and all of that, yes. The reflection should reflect on because when you don't reward yourself,
Exactly.
Sometimes life becomes difficult to manage. My dad was a sage. He taught me one lesson. There was a time I was really feeling very sad because something didn't work out the way I wanted. And my dad said, you're feeling so sad because you don't reward yourself when you win. That take out time to reward yourself when you win. Small wins, celebrate yourself. So that when you lose, it won't be too hard on you. Imagine that you made so much money and you never really celebrated yourself and then you lost the money. It means that you just never really enjoyed all of that work and money. So in line with the the reflection, reflecting on the entertainment and the enjoyment. I think my dad made me understand that once in a while, reward yourself, reward your friends. So, yes, at some point, we're going to get together.
All right.
And then reflect on the enjoyment.
Okay, let's move ahead to the discussion this morning. We'll be talking about Nigeria at 64, the human rights violations. Looking back at Nigeria 64 years, independence, we've seen recurring patterns of violations from the military regime of 70s and 80s, and of course the 2020 NSACS protest. What would you say? How would you assess the progression or regression in protecting citizens' rights over the time?
That's very interesting. When you talk about the progression, first of all, I don't think much has changed. Basically, what happened was that the colonial masters created a template for ruling their colonial enclaves, and Nigeria was one of them. And at the time they were ruling us, they were teaching their young people human rights in schools. They were upholding the rights of their own citizens, but they never really taught us human rights here. They never taught us to respect our own rights. They never taught us to take human rights seriously, basically because they couldn't be colonizing us and teaching us human rights. On the contrary, they were interested in flogging us into shape, so they were oppressing us, officially speaking, just like the South Africans were oppressed in apartheid South Africa. For instance, when the coal miners in Enugu decided to protest the ill treatment, they were shot by a crazy police officer, and nothing happened. So why did I start with that? The colonial master set a template of abuse, both in terms of leadership and in terms of policing. So the leaders were not really interested in protecting the rights of the citizens. We had spaces we called GRA. The GRA in those days was reserved for the elites, the white folks and the few black administrators. And in those days, if you had the misfortune of passing through the reserved area without any reason for being there, you were arrested and charged for wandering. You are walking around anyhow. So if you had to just try to use a shortcut to get to somebody's house and you pass through the GRA, you could just find yourself in jail for passing through, like you as kids, you were making noise and chattering near a white man's window. So the leadership wasn't sensitive to the fact that we were human and we had rights. And then they created a police and other institutions that enforced what they wanted us to believe. So the police at that time, it wasn't our friend. I don't know if they're our friends now, but that's a matter for another day. So what they did was to enforce the philosophy of the white man, to keep us in shape. And they did that very well. And by the time, and that's the problem we have today, because we're talking about the progression. By the time the colonial masters left and handed over to the black masters, because there was no deliberate orientation on the concept of servant leadership, on the concept of connecting with the people you are leading, on the concept of that if you're a leader, you're a public person. You are not supposed to have a private life. If you're a leader and you're sick, they should tell us because you are our president. If my dad was sick at home, they told us and we knew what the problem was. If we had to pray, we pray. If we had to raise money, we raised money. So because there was no such transition, both in terms of political leaders and in terms of the policing institutions, we now just continued, though we claimed to be independent, and we actually got the independence. In actual terms, we couldn't translate the benefits of the independence to the citizens in terms of human rights because both the leaders and the policing institutions did not understand the concept of human rights. And I wanted to lay that foundation so that we'll understand that from 1960 till now, that is the same problem we are suffering in different ways. If you remember, some time ago, unknown soldiers practically destroyed Fela Anikulapo Kuti's home. And he said his mother was practically hauled out of the window from a first floor. It was a sign of absolute lawlessness at that time, because they could have done what they wanted to do without that level of brutality. But because there was no sense of human rights, there was no place for accountability, nothing changed. And unfortunately, it started with the politicians. And then when the military came in, it became worse. Because usually when they come in, they suspend the aspects of the constitution that wasn't in alignment with their behavior as military boys. They usually suspended the legislative, excuse me, the legislative government. They usually suspended all the human rights sections of the constitution. So they led by decree. And they decreed what suited them. So why am I saying this? The truth is that by the time we started our democratic experiment after the white man left, we were not tutored in human rights, both the political leaders and the police. And the politicians just used, maybe if you are benevolent, then you behaved in that manner. The constitutional framework for human rights was not respected, which is the same story we have now. We have one of the finest documentation of rights that citizens should have in Chapter 4 of our Constitution, and we are not respecting those rights.
Right.
So the challenge we've had is that the foundation was faulty. And that foundation, being a mental foundation, a mindset foundation, will not allow us to really practice human rights properly until we deal with that foundation.
Right. There's hardly any country you can point out to say that they are free from human rights. I mean, if you look at the developed world of the countries of this world, US, UK, France, Germany, they all have human rights problems, issues leaning on their neck in terms of what they have done in the past, either against their own citizens or citizens of all other countries. I'm just wondering if it is possible for a country to be human rights violators free.
Well, I think I like that question from the perspective of the fact that there are a lot of nations have challenges, even those nations we hold up. But I think the finest countries when it comes to respecting human rights are the Scandinavian countries.
Okay.
And I mean, these are countries where they have practically been able to achieve a groundbreaking level of respect for human rights. You are talking of countries like Holland, Finland, Sweden. These are places where women practically have equal rights and shares and everything like men. Some of these countries don't need their prisons anymore. They are renting out prisons to other European nations because so there are countries where the concept of human rights abuse, as we see here, like a man assaulting their wife and all of those things, not only that it doesn't happen as often as it happens here, but if it does, they take it very seriously. And in those nations, the Scandinavian countries, state abuse is minimal, almost non-existent. State abuse meaning agents of state abusing citizens. But when we talk about the big brothers, the countries that we talk about often, the United States, UK, and all of that, they have their baggages. But the major difference is that when the right of a person is infringed upon, the state investigates. The state rises up to defend the person. So when a person says, I can't breathe, and you choke him to death, there will be public outrage and outcry. And the state will rise up to check what happened and hold people accountable, even when that person was supposed to have criminal records or was supposed to be black and does that. But in Nigeria, you see cases that are glaring and shocking, and the state would be not only the perpetrator, but the state would cover up. As we speak, this is a matter for another day, but as we speak, a young man who went for youth service from the southeast, Enugu State precisely, to the southwestern part of Nigeria, disappeared into thin air. And the mother has gone to NYC, no reply. The mother had gone to the police. The day I met this woman, the way she was crying and talking about a son, this poor woman and the sick husband invested everything they had in 1 month to leaving youth service. Nobody can account for his whereabouts. His phone was smashed. Under suspicious circumstances, nobody has taken any step to find him. As little as checking the last conversations on his phone. Because this woman is poor, the husband is bedridden, everybody brushes her away. You are talking about right to life here. We are not even sure the boy is alive. And the state is not doing anything. And this boy died serving the state officially.
Wow.
Practically. I use that example because it's glaring. But we don't have value for the rights of human beings. We don't even have value for life here. So we don't expect that states will be human rights abuse free. But we expect that when there are problems, they should be investigated and there should be solutions. And talking about the fact that we don't really have these solutions, you will notice that it's the same pattern that we've had all this time that is getting worse. She talked about progression, and I didn't get to that. You see, we're actually getting worse in many ways. Though we look better, but we're getting worse. Now, let me explain. Before now, our police won't ask you for money to open a case file. They won't ask you for mobilization, that's the word precisely, to go and arrest a suspect. They won't ask you for mobilization. Yesterday, somebody went to Zone 13 at Ukpo to respond to an invitation to sort out a case. And the person in charge asked him to bring money so that they will visit the scene of crime, mobilization. It wasn't that bad before. You know, the police has better machinery for making us believe they're our friends. They have police diary, they have social media handles. When a scandal shows up on social media, they try the victims and tell us that, oh, they have tried these victims. But you go to the same place and there is a bad case which happened recently here in Enugu. So somebody said, pay 150,000 for bail. And the intervention officer HRVC sent, Human Rights Volunteer Corps sent to the station, said, we don't pay money for bail. He told us that bail is free. And the police officer insisted. So this young man called Abuja, a certain number of an officer who came to train HRVC volunteers, the CRU, Complaints Response Unit. And the Complaints Response Unit called these officers in Enugu and practically chewed their ear for even trying to collect money. And an officer, a deputy commissioner of police, who should be responsible, now ask the person who made the call to Abuja, so if you sack this man, are you going to feed his family? Why did you call Abuja? Why didn't you come to ask me first? Now, that's how low we have descended. So we're actually getting worse, if you ask me. The colonial police had a problem. Their only problem was to ensure that we didn't make noise or agitate or gather to demonstrate and all that. They were not asking people to bring mobilization to the extent that we're doing now. So I think we're actually retrogressing. 30 years ago, 35 years ago, we didn't have touts going to carry people bodily and carry the equipment in the name of collecting revenue. It wasn't that bad. Today, if they carry your generator and you seem to be uninterested in the generator, they may carry you bodily to put you in the bus. As a matter of fact, you know, on a funny note, something happened in our own office a few years ago. They came to our office. Some of them said, oh, this is human rights office, so we have to be careful. So they did something that I consider both amusing and ingenious. They called, they told the boy, oh, we want to see certain papers. The boy said, okay, let me call our boy. He said, no, we don't need to see your boss. Just the papers for this payment, that payment. The boy said, okay, I can't give you the papers unless I call my boss. They said, okay, come and explain to our guy. So he went downstairs and put his head in the bus to explain. They took the two legs and put him in the bus.
Hey.
And this is a true story, and drove away.
My God.
The painful part is that I was sitting in my office. I thought there was somebody at the reception. The reception was empty. There was nobody else in the office for some time. It was when a visitor came and was shouting that I came out. And I was like, what happened? Where is this young man? After about an hour, he called me and narrated the story. I first had a good laugh. I was angry because he said that he put his head to explain as he was told, and they collected the two legs outside and put in the bus and drove away.
Wow.
And that's state abuse. These were supposed to be agents of state collecting revenue. Isn't there a more civilized way to collect revenue? A girl was coming out of her basement. Now, it doesn't happen anymore with Eswama. I should say that because we're receiving those reports and we're fighting back. A girl was coming out from a typical compound, what they call yard here in Nigeria, with her towel tied around her chest with nothing else. And men who came for it, Eswama raid many years ago, carried her physically, towel and all, and put her inside the bus and drove her to Eswama court in that towel. A young woman.
Wow.
And touching her in that manner is already a criminal offense. Because they were not women, they were men. But they did. We were called to go and rescue her. So the truth is that we are retrogressing. We have a Human Rights Commission. We have several human rights institutions. We have the Human Rights Commission. We have state organs. For instance, in Enugu, we have the Citizens' Rights and Mediation Center. Lagos, we have the Office of the Public Defender. We have a plethora of human rights institutions. But I'll be honest with you, they are not able to face down the level of challenges we have, especially because a lot of these human rights abuses are practically sponsored and facilitated by politicians who do not have a sense of the fact that people should enjoy their rights. And one of the challenges we have is that they feel that if they allow us to enjoy these rights, that will be ungovernable, that they will have power to challenge them. So they are thinking like the colonial masters. The only difference is that we are black and they are black too. Because the colonial masters said that if we allow these people to exercise their rights, they'll begin to demand for freedom. That's exactly the same situation we are in now. So that if they allow us to exercise our full rights, we would begin to ask questions they may not want to answer. We begin to place demands on them, hold them accountable in ways they may not want us to. So we are retrogressing. And it's sad that with the level of education available to us, with the number of professors of law that we have, with the number of judicial institutions that we have, with the number of places where you're supposed to go and hold abusers accountable that we have, we are still getting worse. So we need to begin to have a more functional conversation that will do at least two things. One is get citizens to become aware that human rights is not a privilege. It's a right. It's actually called inalienable right, a right you cannot separate from the person. And I also make bold to say that human rights are first given by God and documented by man. So when we talk about rights, we're not even talking about something you just dashed us, as we say. No. Because the right to fair hearing is innate, it's inborn, to the extent that even a 6-year-old child demands for fair hearing. If you want to punish a 6-year-old child without listening to his adult, so he said, Daddy, let me tell you what happened. Daddy, wait now. The person is demanding the right to fair hearing. I don't want you to punish me without listening to me. So at that time, the person didn't attend human rights training, the person didn't read anything. But there's this innate feeling that I want to tell you what happened before you make a decision. When you see people being maltreated, maybe by the military or police, roll on the ground, do frog jump, the first thing you do is to get angry and say, this is not right. Even people who don't know about human rights say that. And in human rights balance, it's called the right to the dignity of the human person. So you don't have to treat a human being properly. So when we respect human rights, then we can begin to talk about enjoying Nigeria. It's not just about the economic hardship. In the Scandinavian countries I mentioned, when you look at indices of happiness, which is one of the indices we are looking at now globally, we have the Human Capacity Development Index. We also have the Happiness Index. The Scandinavian countries, Finland always comes first. That is, Scandinavian countries are way ahead because you're happy. Happiness is not about just having money. There are a lot of young Nigerians who have money, but once they see a police checkpoint, their happiness will vanish. Sometimes they'll make a U-turn altogether. And what's the offense? The hairstyle, maybe one earring, and then maybe you are driving a Mercedes. That labels you as a target. But that's not good. I mean, you could be an entertainer. You could have plenty of money without being a fraudster. But because you are dressed in a certain way, you are labeled. And you're not only labeled, you're maltreated. So we have a very serious job to do. And I'm glad that the people are gradually rising up to it. They are beginning to assert themselves. The media is also rising up to the occasion. We have to put human rights on the front burner. The truth is that if we don't get human rights right, most of the other things we're looking for won't get them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it just goes to show to the extent that a lot of people can go, to defend certain things. I'm trying to look at this whole thing from the premise of the government. You had highlighted the colonial masters and what they did and how they went about it, creating the foundation that has got us to this point. It does look like that they are the ones that handed us this style of continued, colonialism, because it still rears its ugly head even within us. The NSAS campaign, the arrest of NBAD governance protesters and labeling them
treasonable
they are
actors.
traitors.
Yes, they're traitors.
And then, asking them to pay 10 million naira, fines and the likes. So I'm wondering, do you think the government is deliberate with making sure that the citizens don't have the access to these informations about their own rights? Because if they do, it will be too much for them to handle.
First of all, I'll start from the last statement you made. They actually think that it will be too much for them to handle. And that's why they don't want us to have access to human rights information. But let me tell you the truth. Though they think that it's difficult to lead educated persons or enlightened persons or those who know about their rights, I think it's easier to lead them but difficult to mislead them. And because our political leaders insist on misleading people, they don't want us to know our rights. I will give you an example. If you look at the Code of Conduct for Public Servants, which is a part of our Constitution, a schedule in our Constitution, it actually gives us clear information on how public servants should behave, down to the gifts they can receive or reject, that they cannot engage in choices that smack of conflict of interest, and all of that. But unfortunately, they don't want people to have such information. If you have such information, you can weigh situations and options and say, this is not right. So we have a situation where, at the end of the day, the political leaders don't want our people to have information that will embolden them to hold political leaders accountable. That is actually the truth. And the behavior is based on their assumption that when people become enlightened, when people have this kind of information, that it will be difficult to lead them. And the interpretation of leadership is doing whatever they like without people holding them to account. And that is why in Nigeria, a young man demonstrates because he thinks he doesn't have a future here. And then he's punished for demonstrating and labeled a traitor. But the truth is that the person who demonstrated on the street to say end bad governance is a more patriotic Nigerian than the person who sat at home. Because the person is saying end bad governance. The Constitution actually prohibits bad governance. So the person is actually more patriotic. The person is actually saying what the Constitution said to do, to hold leaders accountable. So I don't know how we can now say that the person who is doing Nigeria a favor by calling Nigeria's attention to the fact that we are not doing well. I don't know how you punish that person. And then you extol the person who says we can continue business as usual. We pay people to come on television, that's my view, to come and say we're not going to participate in. Because the people who sit down and tell us that we're not going to participate in these protests, when you look at them, first of all, you see them on television only when there's a protest that's coming up. And then they say, we won't participate. You don't see them any other time. Which means that somebody created that avenue. Somebody apparently paid for that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And then they come and tell us, we have a coalition of civil society organizations that won't participate. Those who want to participate, we don't give them platform to come and say, we want to participate. So we have a problem with our political leaders. I had the privilege of meeting the most influential Guba candidates in Enugu State before the election.
Okay, just 1 minute, just to wrap up.
Yes, and I discussed human rights issues. And they all said, I didn't know it was this bad, including the present governor, Peter Mba. I spoke with him one-on-one. He said, I didn't believe it's this bad. And I said, the only interest I have is whoever emerges governor, deal with this. I mean, where the state belongs to you in terms of leadership, you are the father of the state. Make sure your children don't suffer. But the moment these leaders get onto the saddle, the people who were there before them will explain to them that if you give these guys 1 yard, they'll want 1 mile. So don't give them any rights. That the only way you can get revenue and get everything you want is by suppressing the people. And that takes us back, right back to the colonial heritage, which means that we have flag independence, but we're not enjoying the citizens' independence.
Wow.
Okay. That is it. A very interesting time with you, Raleigh Larry Oguegu. Thank you very much for your insightful contribution.